We all do it. Translate the whole sentence word for word. It makes sense in a way. Why isn't Japanese the same as English but just in a different script? Every English word should have an equivalent Japanese word, right? Well, if it were that simple, everyone would be masters of the Japanese language with a proficiency of the highest JLPT level, N1 level. That's not the case though, because only around a quarter of people who took the JLPT N1 test actually passed. So, what is it that makes Japanese so hard to translate? There are many different things that make Japanese a language you can't directly translate, but I'll be boiling it down into two main sections. The structure of Japanese, the way Japanese is built, and the difficult words and phrases you might come across. English uses an SVO structure, which means that the verb comes before the object. I ate an apple. I am the subject, ate is the verb, and the apple is the object. Japanese is a little different, since it switches the verb and object when making sentences. 私はリンゴを食べました. I am still at the beginning of the sentence, but the verb and the object has switched places. If you were to translate the sentence word for word, it would translate to I apple ate. It's a pretty straightforward process to rearrange the sentence into its correct English, but as the sentence gets more complicated, it also gets more difficult to translate directly to English, then rearrange it afterwards. 高校を卒業した直後、両親が通っていた大学で勉強を始めた。High school graduate after parents went university study start. After graduating high school, I started studying at the university that my parents went to. The more you use the Japanese and English languages in your everyday lives, it will become second nature when translating between them. Japanese tends to avoid pronouns. What? How do you know who you're talking about? Take this sentence for example. 全部終わりましたか? This sentence could change its meaning depending on the context. If I'm talking to a crowd of people, it would translate to has everyone finished everything? If I'm talking to my friend Taro-kun, it would translate to have you finished everything, Taro-kun? Japanese also has multiple pronouns for the same thing, so if you do hear them being used, you might get a little confused. In English, it's just I. I drove to get milk. I fell in the toilet. I stepped on a cat. Japanese, on the other hand, is built different. There are quite a few different ways to say I, making it difficult to translate them. 私、僕、俺、うち、自分、私、私. These can all be used interchangeably depending on your relationship with the person you're talking to and the situation you're in. There are different politeness levels as well. In general, there are 4 different politeness levels: casual, polite, respectful, and humble. Casual and polite are the most basic ways of speaking Japanese, which you learn at the very beginning of the Japanese journey. You can start your journey, if you haven't started already, through my Japanese N5 textbook, Japanese Made Fun. To start learning Japanese the fun way, scan the QR code or click the link in the description. The way I learned the 2 other politeness levels, and is a good way to understand them, is that everyone is standing on the flat ground. Now, how would you make the other person higher than you? Respect in Japan is about making the other person better or in a higher position than you. The first and more obvious way would be to put the other person on a stool. That's the analogy for respectful politeness, where you lift the other person up. The other way would be to dig a hole and stand in it so you yourself are below the other person. This is humble politeness, where you put yourself below the other person. Put simply, if you have a verb like to eat, you can have 4 different politeness levels for the same word. 食べる、食べます、召し上がる、いただく. There's actually 5, but not all verbs have a 5th. Having multiple ways to say the same thing in English makes it a pain to translate. There are many words and phrases that just can't be translated, both in English and Japanese. Idioms are a classic example since even I learnt some of them just recently. They're impossible to translate smoothly unless Japanese has an equivalent. These ones don't. Kick the bucket, break a leg, piece of cake. You would either have to translate it directly, losing the meaning, or describe the meaning, making it a much longer sentence. Other ones like kill two birds with one stone exist in Japanese. Isseki nichou, so it can be translated. Other things like puns and jokes usually get lost in translation. You'll see it commonly in anime when a character does or says something and everyone is laughing, but the translation isn't funny. Translators also have their own way of translating, so watching one version of anime with subtitles may have slightly different translations to other versions. Itadakimasu is another word where it just doesn't have a translation. There are many interpretations of itadakimasu, such as thank you for the food or even let's eat, though if you were to translate it directly, it would mean you're receiving something and, in a way, saying thank you. There are also different dialects that make it very confusing. The most well-known ones are Kansai Ben, the dialect for the southern central part of Japan with Osaka and Kyoto, and Uchinaguchi, the Okinawa dialect. Each area you go to probably has slight differences to the standard version of Japanese, making it very confusing, even for native Japanese speakers. Kansai Ben would be the one that most tourists would encounter first, since one of the popular spots to travel to would be Kyoto and Osaka, both of which are in the Kansai region. Uchinaguchi would be the most difficult to learn and adapt to. Search up Uchinaguchi language online. It's literally a whole new language. I could only understand like 10% of this normal Uchinaguchi conversation. I would say the dialects aren't as important as the other parts, but it certainly is an interesting part of Japanese culture. So, all of these things combine to make the Japanese language you know today harder and maybe even close to impossible to translate directly. The best thing you can do to become a more natural speaker or translator would be to keep trying to immerse yourself in the authentic conversations. Living in Japan, watching anime without subtitles, or learning about the culture would all help you develop your Japanese. Some of these are harder said than done, but there are things everyone can do to practice your Japanese. Soon, you'll be able to easily translate between the two languages naturally without the need of a translating tool. Okay, go get Japanesing.